This is Jack Batten, UTS 54, writer of books, mostly about jazz, and he's at it again. But in 2010, Jack wrote the book on the 100-year history of UTS, the University of Toronto Schools.
A lot of fun was I wrote brief biographical notes of many of the teachers and many of the teachers that I had. So it was sort of fun to write about them. There was a guy named McLean who taught mathematics, and he was very tough. We called him, nicknamed him Nails. I think he's remembered to this day as Nails. The one time I talked to Nails McLean in his advancing years, in my own advancing years, he asked me, well, Batten, what is it you do? And I said, I write books, Mr. McLean. And he said, oh, that's very nice, you write books. But what do you do for a living?
You'd think that 100 years of marriage between UTS and the University of Toronto would be working just fine. But no, divorce was in the air. Dark clouds were gathering.
In the spring of 2011, it was announced that I was going to be the new principal of University of Toronto Schools to start July 1st, 2011. And sure enough, in April of that year, the school received a letter from the University of Toronto telling us that indeed our affiliation, they were not welcoming our plans for renewal, and that they planned instead to end the affiliation officially in 2021. And we had to be prepared to move out of our home, which we had inhabited since 1910.
He certainly was the past president who had a connection to UTS, but knew that the University of Toronto itself needed significant building capacity and access to real estate upon which to build those academic buildings. When prior to my time, we did signal the end, a lease period came up, and we said, we're not renewing. You need to find a new home.
In the fall of that year, I was invited to the home of Jim Fleck, graduate of 1949, for his class reunion. It was held in the backyard, and we were all seated around tables, and various members of the class were speaking, and they were all, of course, very concerned about the future of the school. Sitting next to me was Bruce McLean, and Bruce was a math teacher, former math teacher, hockey coach of UTS, and he turned to me and he said, Rosemary, you need to get this man involved. At which point, all of his class started to applaud. And the entire backyard was all in agreement that Jim needed to join the board at UTS.
First of all, it was trying to re-engage with the university. And that, of course, was partly with the president. In fact, Naylor retired, and Merrick Gertler came in as his successor. And I was at the reception at which it was announced that he was going to be the new president, or I guess to welcome him to the presidency. And it was at that meeting that I arranged a luncheon with him to talk to him about UTS and what it was we were trying to accomplish. And he did meet with me one-on-one, and we had a good meeting. And following that, I was introduced to Scott Maybury, who became the point person for the university moving forward.
Throughout the period from 2012 until 2015, we negotiated with the university, and we were able to negotiate a 4-part agreement. The first part was an academic affiliation, and that had UTS twice a year showing to the university how it was contributing to its mission and vision and presidential priorities. The second part of the agreement was the right to use the name University of Toronto Schools as well as the school's logo. The third part of the agreement was a real property license, giving us the right to stay on the site for 50 years and the right to renew the license rent-free. And the final part of the agreement was definitely the most challenging, where we had to make arrangements to rebuild the site, raise all the money, and put in place a new school building at the corner of Huron and Bloor for the university.
We looked at what we thought we could raise. I think there were some studies done on that, and it looked like a tough task because most of our graduates were doctors, lawyers, professors, all people that may live well but don't have wealth. And if you're trying to raise a large amount, and we eventually came up with a target of $60 million, you need quite a few people that are going to write seven-figure checks, and you don't necessarily find them in that group. So part of our challenge was that we hadn't really been a fundraising organization in the past. So first we had to even find out who our alumni were and where they were and how we could contact them.
Jim put a story in our route about founders, and in it he said that UTS was in search of founders. He extended an invitation for those who did have the capacity and the willingness to make a $1 million or more gift to the school to contact him. And right away, our first founder, David Graham, contacted Jim by email. He said, "I've checked with my accountant. She said I can do it. I can be a founder." And with that began a beautiful story of generosity with 20 founders coming forward.
I won't try and list them all, 20 of them, as I pointed out, some with larger amounts than others, but all wanting UTS to succeed and survive. So my heartfelt thanks to every founder, and I hope that we'll be able to recognize them more individually in the various functions that we're performing.
I would now love to take you on a tour and show you the results of that affiliation agreement, which have resulted in a brand new building where our students can learn and engage with one another for the next 50 years. So here we are in the Fleck Atrium. Jim Fleck, our benefactor in so many ways, has contributed this beautiful space for students to socialize and work together. One of our favorite alumni, Hal Jackman, a noted thespian, gifted us this beautiful space, the Jackman Theatre, which is used by students and staff for drama classes, for dance, and for many events. So here we are in the Ewan's Chemistry Lab. Now this space was fashioned after the Hospital for Sick Children's Research Lab. Here we are in the new UTS library, provided by an alumnus of the 1970s, and featuring all of the accoutrements of a modern library, including movable stacks. So here we are in our beautiful new art rooms, which reflect the history of our building. The windows were maintained and refurbished and replaced in order to maintain that original look. So here we are in the Lang Innovation Lab, a center for teaching and learning and creativity. Here we are in the new UTS Strings Room, formerly the swimming pool. Today our students are doing laps with violins and cellos. So here we are in the athletic center in front of the McIntyre Gymnasium. And this is the very first time that UTS has had a double gymnasium and bleachers where our fans can cheer on the UTS Blues.
One of the great and gentle milestones of UTS history occurred in 1973 when the school welcomed girls and finally became co-ed. Meet two of the first girls.
We had a wonderful reception at the school. The teachers were the best teachers I've ever had in any of the schools that I've ever been to. And our classmates were wonderful and supportive. And I felt like I had come home to an environment where intellectual curiosity was valued, prized, encouraged, and it just set me on the right path for the rest of my life.
It was a really, really exciting place to be at that age and at that time of our lives, where opportunities were boundless. There was everything on offer. As girls, we were not only were we given myriad opportunities and encouragement, but we were also a bit of a novelty, and that had a certain specialness to it as well.
If you are willing to work hard, you are going to do amazing. Like, anyone is going to do amazing if they are willing to put that time in. And it's something that, I don't know, I guess I believe most kids can do with the proper support and the proper foundations.
I graduated in 1990 with a focus in arts. I'm an actress and a writer now and a director, and I live in New York. But UTS is still the home of my intellectual heart, as it were, and so many of my friends and lifelong relations were forged here and continue to be important to my work and life and spirit in adulthood.
The need to build a new school opened floodgates of generosity. Founders and donors provided the $60 million needed to move the project forward.
I'm very grateful to UTS for the education it gave me and the experience it gave me. And of course, I think an environment where knowledge is revered and learning is respected is a very healthy environment for kids. I don't know if I would have had the fortitude or the strength of mind to be as keenly engaged in learning if I hadn't been surrounded by other kids, with the same motivation and objective. So I think that's a special thing.
The thesis that I had in giving, and this is not the only entity that I give to, I believe giving, if you've been successful, giving is a part of life. The thesis was, find those communities where you were formed and help them to form the leaders of the next generation. And I think that's what we are successfully doing in the rebuilding and the rebooting of UTS.
Well, I think UTS is both an amazing and a very unique place, and I had 6 terrific years here, and I think when the time came to make sure the school stayed alive, frankly, and had a new home, I was more than willing to step up and assist with that. And when it became evident that the $60 million we were trying to raise for the Building the Future campaign was extremely important, but not sufficient to get the building built, there was an idea that maybe the foundation could lend some additional money to the school. So that's what we ended up doing. We took 30 of that 40 million of incremental funds and have lent it back to the school.
And I was Chancellor of the University of Toronto at the time.
Yes.
And that made me very pro university activities, and I really got involved, and to the extent I only got involved really because I'm a donor, but I did that because I thought the University of Toronto should have UTS. I did it really for the university as much, if not more, than being a UTS guy wanting to do it for UTS.
Alumni stepped forward in so many ways, including the contribution of Don Schmidt, architect.
I think another piece of the school that we find kind of very satisfying is simply the sort of connectivity and natural light that links all floors down to the lowest level, and combining that with places for people to gather and students to gather in informal ways is always an exciting part of the aesthetic of the school.
The school is strong and the spirit willing. Now meet the future.
7th grade, when both of us entered UTS, feels both kind of like yesterday, but also like a lifetime ago. We feel like, I personally feel like I kind of grew up here. I sort of found my most passionate hobbies and interests at UTS, surrounded by the people in my grade and in the community, and led by the teachers who I still have today. So it sort of just means like growing into who I've become over the past few years.
For me, I really value the people that I place around me. So with UTS, the community is just so amazing because everyone wants to be there and wants to be engaged with classes, with the co-curriculars, with sports, with art. So when you have such a close-knitted group of people that are passionate at what they do and do what they're passionate about, it's amazing.
This new grade 7 is about to get the biggest welcome they ever had.
So now is the time to look ahead. UTS students of the past have contributed and made a difference in every field of endeavor. In this fabulous new facility, which has a unique design, innovative features, and is empowered by technology, our students will have the opportunities to reshape the world, and the tradition will continue.